The icy moon of Erinder 7 orbited silently in the farthest reaches of the galaxy. It was a desolate place, untouched by warmth or light for centuries. The surface shimmered faintly under the dim glow of its distant star, but it wasn't beauty that defined this world. It was death. Temperatures plunged so low that even the hardiest machines struggled to function here. Winds howled across endless plains of jagged ice and snow, erasing any trace of life that might have dared to exist. Somewhere amidst this frozen wasteland lay Zira. Her small, fragile body was half buried in a drift of snow, her blue skin almost blending with the frost around her. She looked more like a statue than a living being, her elongated limbs stiffened by cold, her crystalline hair sparkling faintly despite being caked with ice. Only the faint rise and fall of her chest hinted at life within her. Zira had been left behind. Days ago, or perhaps weeks. Time blurred in such extreme conditions. Her people had abandoned her. They were explorers from a distant planet, tasked with establishing a new colony on Erinder 7. But when they realized the environment was too hostile, too unforgiving, they made the decision to leave without her. To them, she was expendable, a casualty of their mission's failure. No one noticed as she slipped away during the evacuation, collapsing into the snow as the last ship ascended into the sky. Now, alone and forgotten, Zira clung to the remnants of consciousness. Memories flickered through her mind like fragments of broken glass. She remembered the faces of her people, their indifference as they turned their backs on her. She remembered the biting chill that seeped into her bones, stealing her strength bit by bit. And she remembered the voice inside her head, soft yet insistent, urging her to hold on just a little longer. Far above Erinder 7, oblivious to the drama unfolding below, the human exploration vessel Eos drifted silently through space. Its sleek silver hull gleamed faintly in the starlight, and its crew moved about their duties with quiet efficiency. Captain Elias Vane stood on the bridge, staring out at the vast expanse of stars before him. He was a man shaped by loss. His wife and child had perished in an accident years ago, leaving him adrift in his own way. Now he poured all his energy into leading the Eos, searching for resources to sustain Earth's struggling colonies. Captain, called Lieutenant Maraquin, the ship's navigator, breaking the silence. "We've picked up something unusual." Elias turned toward her, his sharp features softening slightly at the interruption. "What is it?" Mara gestured to the console screen where a faint blip pulsed steadily. "It's coming from the moon directly ahead. Some kind of energy signature. It's weak, but definitely there." Elias frowned. Energy signatures weren't uncommon in space, but finding one on an uncharted moon intrigued him. Most moons in this sector were barren wastelands, incapable of supporting life. Still, something about this signal felt different. Could it be natural? He asked. "Unlikely," replied Dr. Leela Hart, the ship's medic and resident scientist. She joined them on the bridge, her dark eyes scanning the data. "The pattern suggests artificial origins. Could be technology, or maybe even survivors." The word survivors hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Humanity hadn't encountered intelligent alien life in decades, and the prospect of doing so now sent a ripple of excitement and caution through the crew. "We're supposed to be focused on resource collection," said Engineer Dax Monroe, stepping forward. His gruff tone carried a note of irritation. Detouring for some random signal could waste valuable time. Elias shot him a pointed look. "If it's survivors, we can't ignore it. Protocol dictates." "Protocol also says we prioritize Earth's needs over curiosity," Dax interrupted, crossing his arms. "But sure, let's risk our mission for a wild goose chase." Tension crackled between the two men, but Elias didn't back down. "We'll investigate briefly," he decided firmly. "If it's nothing, we move on. If it's something—" He trailed off, his gaze drifting back to the blip on the screen. Something deep within him, a gut feeling, perhaps, told him this discovery was important. Within hours, the Eos descended toward the moon's surface. The landing party consisted of Elias, Leela, Dax, and 2 security officers, armed and prepared for anything. As they stepped onto the icy terrain, the bitter cold hit them like a wall. Their breath fogged instantly in the thin atmosphere, and every step crunched loudly against the frozen ground. "This place is a graveyard," muttered one of the security officers, glancing nervously at the horizon. "Stay focused," Elias ordered, though he couldn't shake the eerie feeling himself. The landscape stretched endlessly in every direction, devoid of color or movement. It was as if the moon itself had died long ago. They followed the signal, trudging through knee-deep snow until they reached its source. There, partially buried beneath a mound of ice, lay Zira. At first glance, she seemed otherworldly, a creature straight out of myth. Her glowing markings pulsed faintly, and her delicate features were framed by strands of crystalline hair. Yet there was no mistaking the fragility of her form, the way her body trembled ever so slightly as if fighting to stay alive. Leela knelt beside her, brushing away the snow with gloved hands. "She's alive," she whispered, awe coloring her voice. "Barely." Dax snorted. "Looks like trouble waiting to happen." Elias ignored him, his attention fixed on the alien girl. Whatever she was, wherever she came from, she deserved a chance. "Bring her aboard," he commanded, carefully. As they lifted Zira onto a stretcher, none of them could have guessed the impact she would have on their lives, or the journey that awaited them all. For now, the frozen wasteland held its secrets close, whispering promises of discovery and danger alike. The moment Zira was brought aboard the Eos, she became the center of attention and tension. Her frail form lay motionless on a medical bed in the ship's infirmary, her shimmering blue skin and faintly glowing markings drawing both awe and suspicion from the crew. Dr. Leela Hart worked tirelessly to stabilize her, monitoring vitals that seemed almost alien compared to human biology. Zira's heart rate was slower than expected, her body temperature dangerously low, and yet there was an undeniable resilience in her, a quiet strength that refused to let go. "She's not like anything we've ever seen," Leela murmured, adjusting the thermal blankets draped over Zira's body. She turned to Elias, who stood nearby with arms crossed, watching intently. "Her physiology is remarkable. I've never encountered cells that regenerate this quickly, even under extreme stress." Elias nodded thoughtfully but said nothing. His mind raced with questions. Who was she? Where did she come from? And most importantly, why had she been left behind on that frozen moon? He knew they couldn't just abandon her, not after everything they'd risked to bring her aboard. But he also understood the weight of their decision. Taking in an unknown alien, especially one so clearly advanced, carried risks. Risks that some members of the crew were already voicing loudly. In the corner of the room, Dax Monroe leaned against the wall, arms folded tightly across his chest. His sharp features twisted into a scowl as he watched Leela tend to Zira. "You're wasting resources," he muttered, his voice laced with frustration. "We don't know what she is, or where she came from. For all we know, she could be a weapon, or worse, a liability." Leela shot him a sharp look. "She's alive, Dax. That makes her worth saving." "Alive doesn't mean harmless," Dax shot back, stepping closer. "Look at her. Those markings, that hair. She's not natural. Whatever she is, she's dangerous." Before Leela could respond, Elias stepped between them, his tone firm. "Enough. We'll proceed carefully, but we're not turning our backs on her. Not now." His words silenced Dax for the moment, though the engineer's glare made it clear the argument wasn't over. Hours passed, and slowly Zira began to stir. At first, it was subtle, a twitch of her fingers, a soft sigh escaping her lips. Then her eyes fluttered open, revealing irises that glowed faintly, like twin moons. Panic flashed across her face as she took in her surroundings, the sterile walls of the infirmary, the unfamiliar faces staring down at her. With a sudden burst of energy, she tried to sit up, only to collapse back onto the bed, weak and disoriented. "It's okay," Leela said gently, placing a reassuring hand on Zira's shoulder. "You're safe here." Zira stared at her, confusion etched into her delicate features. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but no sound came out. Instead, she gestured wildly, pointing at herself and then toward the window that showed the endless void of space outside. "She's trying to communicate," Elias observed, leaning forward. "But how?" Leela grabbed a datapad and began sketching simple images. A star, a planet, a figure standing alone. Holding it up for Zira to see, she pointed to each drawing in turn. To everyone's surprise, Zira nodded slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes. She reached out hesitantly, taking the stylus from Leela's hand, and began drawing her own symbols. They were intricate and flowing, unlike any language the humans had seen before. Over the next few days, communication became a painstaking process. Through gestures, drawings, and shared emotions, Zira pieced together fragments of her story. She conveyed memories of her people, a proud race of explorers who had traveled far across the galaxy in search of new worlds to call home. But their journey had ended in failure when they discovered Erindor 7, a barren wasteland unfit for colonization. Rather than stay and fight for survival, they chose to leave, and left her behind. Leela listened intently, her heart breaking for the alien girl. "They abandoned you?" she asked softly, tears welling in her eyes. Zira nodded, her expression a mixture of sadness and acceptance. She pointed to herself, and then drew a small circle around her image on the datapad, separating it from the others. It was clear she had been cast aside, deemed unworthy of rescue. As trust grew between Zira and the humans, so did curiosity. The crew gathered in the mess hall one evening to discuss their findings, their reactions ranging from wonder to skepticism. Some, like Leela, felt profound empathy for Zira, seeing her as a kindred spirit, a survivor against all odds. Others, like Dax, remained wary, convinced her presence spelled trouble. "She's hiding something," Dax insisted, pacing the length of the table. "Why else would her people leave her? Something about her scared them enough to cut their losses and run." "That's speculation," Elias countered, his voice calm but firm. "Until we have proof, we treat her as a guest. Nothing more, nothing less." "But what if she's not just a victim?" Dax pressed, slamming his fist onto the table. "What if she's part of whatever went wrong on that moon? What if bringing her aboard puts us all in danger?" His words hung heavy in the air, planting seeds of doubt in the minds of some crew members. Even those who initially supported helping Zira found themselves questioning her motives. Was she truly innocent, or was there more to her story than she let on? Despite the growing unease among the crew, Zira continued to adapt to life aboard the EOS. She marveled at the technology surrounding her, touching control panels and holographic displays with childlike wonder. When offered food, she mimicked the humans' actions, chewing cautiously before breaking into a wide grin at the taste of something sweet. These small moments of connection helped bridge the gap between species, reminding everyone that beneath her otherworldly appearance, Zira was still a living, feeling being. Yet, even as bonds formed, challenges arose. Zira's presence disrupted the ship in subtle ways. Equipment near her quarters malfunctioned without explanation. Lights flickered erratically, and strange whispers echoed through the corridors late at night. While some dismissed these incidents as coincidences, others weren't so sure. Dax, ever vigilant, began documenting every anomaly, convinced they were connected to Zira. One evening, as Elias walked past Zira's quarters, he noticed her sitting cross-legged on the floor, her hands hovering above a glowing orb she had created using spare parts scavenged from the engineering bay. The light pulsed rhythmically, sensing with the faint hum emanating from her body. She looked up at him, her luminous eyes filled with a mix of fear and determination. "She's learning," Leela whispered from behind him, having joined unnoticed. "Her abilities, they're awakening." Elias frowned, torn between fascination and concern. "Learning what?" Leela hesitated, choosing her words carefully. I think she's tapping into something ancient, something buried deep within her DNA. If we're not careful, it could change everything, for better or worse. As the days stretched into weeks, the crew found themselves walking a fine line between wonder and wariness. Zira's arrival had sparked hope and curiosity, but it had also ignited fears and divisions. Each interaction, each discovery, brought them closer to understanding her, and further from the lives they had known before. For now, the Eos sailed onward, carrying its fragile cargo through the vastness of space. Little did they know, the true test of their resolve, and humanity, was yet to come. As days turned into weeks, Zira's presence aboard the Eos became both a source of wonder and tension. The crew had grown accustomed to her glowing markings and ethereal appearance, but her mysterious abilities continued to baffle and unsettle them. Dr. Leela Hart remained steadfast in her belief that Zira was not a threat, pouring hours into studying her biology and behavior. Meanwhile, engineer Dax Monroe grew increasingly paranoid, convinced that Zira's powers posed an unseen danger. Zira herself was caught between two worlds. On one hand, she marveled at the kindness shown by some members of the crew, particularly Leela and Captain Elias Vane. Their patience and compassion reminded her of what it meant to belong, something she hadn't felt since being abandoned on Erindor 7. On the other hand, she could sense the fear radiating from others, especially Dax, whose suspicious glances followed her wherever she went. She didn't understand why they were afraid of her. All she wanted was to survive, to find purpose again after losing everything. Her connection with Elias deepened during this time. Though neither spoke the other's language fluently, they communicated through gestures, expressions, and shared moments of silence. One evening, as they stood together on the observation deck gazing at the stars, Elias pointed to Earth, a distant blue dot visible through the viewport, and explained its significance to humanity. Zira listened intently, her eyes widening with curiosity. In return, she traced constellations in the air with her fingers, mimicking patterns she remembered from her people's stories. For a brief moment, the vast gulf between their species seemed to shrink. But while these bonds formed, cracks began to show elsewhere. Equipment failures near Zira's quarters became more frequent, forcing the engineering team to work overtime repairing systems. Lights flickered unpredictably, consoles malfunctioned without warning, and strange whispers echoed through the corridors late at night. Some crew members swore they heard voices calling their names or felt a chill pass through them when no one else was around. Dax seized upon these incidents as evidence of his suspicions. He spent hours reviewing security footage, analyzing sensor data, and cross-referencing anomalies. His findings only fueled his paranoia. "It's her," he insisted during a heated meeting in the mess hall. "Every time something goes wrong, it happens near her. Coincidence? I don't think so." Elias sighed, rubbing his temples. "We've been over this, Dax. Correlation doesn't equal causation. Just because things happen near Zira doesn't mean she's causing them." "Then explain the whispers." Dax snapped, slamming his datapad onto the table. "Or the temperature drops, or the fact that nothing breaks down unless she's nearby." The room fell silent as the crew exchanged uneasy glances. Even those who trusted Zira couldn't deny the strange occurrences plaguing the ship. Lila stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "There might be another explanation. Zira's physiology is unlike anything we've seen before. Her body emits low-frequency signals. Maybe those are interfering with our systems unintentionally." "That's your theory," Dax scoffed. "She's not a walking EMP generator, Doc. This is deliberate." Before the argument could escalate further, Zira entered the room. Her arrival silenced everyone instantly. She hesitated in the doorway, sensing the tension in the air. Slowly, she approached the table, placing her hands flat on its surface as if to steady herself. Then, using gestures and fragments of the makeshift language she developed with the crew, she tried to convey her message. "I'd not bad," she said haltingly, pointing to her chest. "I try. Help." Her words hung in the air, met with mixed reactions. Some nodded sympathetically, moved by her sincerity. Others, like Dax, remained unconvinced. "Help," he muttered under his breath. "You call breaking half the ship helping?" Elias intervened before the situation could spiral out of control. "Enough," he said sharply, his tone brooking no argument. "This isn't helping anyone. We'll continue monitoring the situation, but until we have concrete proof, we treat Zira as part of this crew." "Understood." Reluctantly, the crew dispersed, though the unease lingered. That night, as Zira lay awake in her quarters, she replayed the day's events in her mind. She knew she wasn't responsible for the malfunctions. She had no memory of causing them. But she also couldn't deny the strange sensations coursing through her body. It felt as though something within her was awakening, stirring memories buried deep in her subconscious. The next morning, Zira sought out Layla in the infirmary. Using gestures and drawings, she attempted to explain what she was experiencing. She sketched symbols representing energy flowing through her veins, then pointed to her head and heart, indicating confusion and pain. Layla studied the images carefully, her brow furrowed in concentration. "You're saying you feel different?" Leela asked gently. When Zira nodded, Leela pressed on. "Like there's something inside you trying to come out." Zira hesitated, then placed her hand over her chest and closed her eyes. A faint glow emanated from her skin, pulsing rhythmically like a heartbeat. Layla watched in awe as the light intensified, casting soft shadows across the walls. When Zira opened her eyes again, they shimmered with unshed tears. "I scared," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What? Me?" Leela placed a comforting hand on Zira's shoulder. "We'll figure it out together. Whatever's happening, you're not alone." Over the following days, Leela conducted extensive tests to uncover the source of Zira's transformation. What she discovered shocked even her. Zira's DNA contained traces of metallic compounds and encoded information unlike anything found in human genetics. More astonishingly, her neural pathways emitted signals that resembled fragments of a dormant consciousness, something ancient and vast, locked within her very being. "This changes everything," Leela told Elias later, showing him the results. "Zira isn't just an individual. She carries part of her homeworld's collective knowledge embedded in her DNA. If we can unlock it, we could learn things about her species, and possibly ourselves, that we never imagined." "But at what cost?" Elias asked, his expression troubled. "If activating that knowledge puts her, or us, at risk." Leela nodded grimly. "That's the question we need to answer, and soon." Meanwhile, tensions aboard the EOs reached a boiling point. Dax, armed with his growing dossier of anomalies, rallied a faction of the crew to demand action. They cornered Elias in the command center, demanding that Zira be confined to her quarters, or worse, ejected from the ship entirely. "We can't keep pretending she's harmless," Dax shouted, his face red with anger. "Every day she stays here, the ship gets closer to falling apart. Is her life really worth risking ours?" Elias stood tall, his voice cutting through the chaos. "I won't abandon her. Not now, not ever. If you want to leave, fine. But this is my ship, and I decide how we handle this." The standoff ended with Dax storming off, vowing to take matters into his own hands. That night, as the crew slept fitfully, Zira sat alone in her quarters, clutching the glowing orb she had created earlier. She closed her eyes, focusing on the hum of energy within her. For the first time, she embraced it, not out of fear, but out of necessity. Little did anyone realize, Zira's awakening would soon force the crew to confront their deepest fears and reveal truths about themselves they had long buried. The journey ahead promised to be fraught with challenges, but it also held the potential for growth, understanding, and redemption. As the EOs sailed onward through the stars, Its passengers remained united by one undeniable truth. Their fates were intertwined, bound together by a shared struggle against the unknown. The Eos sailed silently through the void of space, its corridors humming with an undercurrent of tension. Zira's mysterious abilities had become the center of attention and concern for the entire crew. While some, like Dr. Leela Hart and Captain Elias Vane, remained steadfast in their belief that she was not a threat, others, led by engineer Dax Monroe, grew increasingly convinced that her presence endangered them all. Leela spent long hours in the infirmary, studying Zira's unique physiology. Each test revealed more about the alien girl's extraordinary biology. Her cells regenerated at an astonishing rate, capable of repairing damage almost instantly. Her blood contained traces of metallic compounds that seemed to conduct energy, and her neural pathways emitted low-frequency signals that pulsed like a heartbeat. But what intrigued and alarmed Leila most was the dormant fragment of consciousness encoded within Zira's DNA. "This isn't just information," Leela explained to Elias one evening, as they reviewed the data together. "It's a piece of her homeworld's collective mind, a fragment of their history, knowledge, and possibly even their technology." Elias frowned, leaning forward to examine the holographic display hovering between them. "And you think this consciousness is waking up?" "It's possible," Leila replied cautiously. "Zira's body seems to be adapting to it, but the process isn't stable. Every time she uses her abilities, it strains her physically and mentally. If we don't find a way to control it, it could overwhelm her, or worse, destabilize the ship." Elias let out a heavy sigh, rubbing his temples. The weight of leadership pressed heavily on him. He trusted Leila's judgment, but the implications of her discovery were staggering. Unlocking Zira's full potential could grant humanity access to unimaginable knowledge. But at what cost? And how could he justify risking the lives of his crew for such a gamble? Meanwhile, Zira struggled to understand the changes happening within her. She felt the energy coursing through her veins, a power both exhilarating and terrifying. It responded to her emotions, flaring brightly when she was afraid or angry, and dimming when she calmed herself. She practiced controlling it late at night in her quarters, focusing on the glowing orb she had created. The device served as both a tool and a distraction, helping her channel her newfound abilities without causing harm. One evening, as Zira sat cross-legged on the floor, her hands hovering over the orb, Elias entered quietly. He watched her for a moment, noting the concentration etched into her delicate features. The light from the orb reflected in her glowing eyes, casting soft shadows across the walls. "Are you okay?" he asked gently, breaking the silence. Zira looked up, startled. For a moment, she hesitated, then nodded slowly. Using gestures and broken phrases, she tried to explain. "I feel different, stronger, but also scared." Elias knelt beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone, Zira. We'll figure this out together." Her lips curved into a faint smile, gratitude shining in her eyes. In that moment, Elias realized just how much Zira relied on their bond, not just for survival, but for hope. She had been abandoned once before. He couldn't let her feel that way again. But while Zira worked to master her abilities, Dax's paranoia reached new heights. Armed with his growing dossier of anomalies, he began conducting secret experiments in engineering. Late at night, when most of the crew was asleep, he rigged sensors around Zira's quarters to monitor her activity. What he discovered shocked him. Every time Zira used her powers, the ship's systems experienced minor disruptions. Fluctuations in temperature, flickering lights, and even brief losses of communication. Dax confronted Elias the next morning, storming into the command center with data pads in hand. "I told you she's dangerous," he exclaimed, slamming the devices onto the console. "Look at this. Every spike in energy corresponds to one of her episodes. She's tearing this ship apart piece by piece." Elias studied the data carefully, his jaw tightening. There was no denying the correlation, But whether it proved causation was another matter entirely. Even if these readings are accurate, it doesn't mean Zira is doing this intentionally. We need more evidence before jumping to conclusions. More evidence. Dax snapped, his voice rising. What kind of evidence do you need? A confession? Maybe a hole blown straight through the hull? Before Elias could respond, an alarm blared throughout the ship. Red warning lights flashed, and the intercom crackled to life. Captain to engineering. We've got a critical failure in the reactor core. Elias bolted toward engineering, followed closely by Dax and a team of security officers. When they arrived, chaos reigned. Sparks flew from overloaded panels, and smoke filled the air. Crew members scrambled to contain the situation, shouting orders over the din. What happened? Elias demanded, grabbing the nearest technician. I don't know, sir, the man shouted back. Everything went haywire at once. It's like the system overloaded itself. Amidst the commotion, Zira appeared, her face pale with fear. She had sensed the disturbance and rushed to help, despite knowing she might be blamed. Without hesitation, she stepped forward, raising her hands. A wave of energy surged from her body, stabilizing the failing systems and restoring order. The sparks ceased, the smoke cleared, and the alarms fell silent. For a moment, everyone stared at her in stunned silence. Then Dax broke the spell, pointing an accusatory finger. See, I knew it. She's manipulating everything. No, Elias countered firmly, stepping between them. She just saved us. Whatever caused the failure wasn't her fault. It was the result of something bigger. Zira lowered her hands, trembling visibly. Tears welled in her luminous eyes as she looked at the crew, searching for understanding. Using gestures and halting words, she tried to explain. Not bad. Trying. Help. Leela stepped forward, placing a protective arm around Zira. She's right. This wasn't an attack. It was a reaction. Her abilities are tied to her emotions, and the stress of the situation triggered them. If anything, she prevented a catastrophe. Dax scoffed, shaking his head. Don't tell me you're buying this nonsense. She's too dangerous to keep around. And yet she just saved your life. Elias shot back, his tone sharp. Enough, Dax. We're done arguing about this. As the crew dispersed, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Though Zira had proven her intentions were good, the incident only deepened the divide among the crew. Some, inspired by her selflessness, began to see her as a protector rather than a threat. Others, like Dax, doubled down on their distrust, convinced she was hiding something far more sinister. That night, Zira sought solace in the observation deck, gazing out at the endless expanse of stars. Elias joined her, standing silently by her side. After a long pause, he spoke softly. You've been through so much already, haven't you? Zira nodded, her gaze fixed on the distant galaxies. Lost everything. My people left me. But you're still here, Elias said, his voice filled with quiet admiration. Still fighting. Still trying to make things better. That takes courage. A single tear slid down Zira's cheek, catching the light like a diamond. She turned to face Elias, her glowing eyes meeting his. For the first time since coming aboard the Eos, she felt truly seen, not as an anomaly or a threat, but as a person. Together, they stood there, united by a shared sense of purpose. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but they faced it with determination. Zira carried within her the key to unlocking untold secrets, and Elias vowed to protect her. As a leader, as a friend, and perhaps as something more. Unbeknownst to them, the fragment of consciousness embedded in Zira's DNA continued to awaken, whispering promises of knowledge and power. The question remained, would it bring salvation or destruction? The tension aboard the Eos had reached a breaking point. The crew, once united by their shared mission to explore the stars and aid humanity, now found themselves divided. At the heart of the conflict was Zira, the alien girl who had become both a savior and a source of fear. While some, like Captain Elias Vane and Dr. Leila Hart, believed in her innocence and potential, others, led by engineer Dax Monroe, saw only danger lurking beneath her glowing skin. Dax's paranoia had grown into something far more dangerous. He no longer trusted the official channels for addressing his concerns. Instead, he began orchestrating secret meetings with those who shared his views. Late at night, in dimly lit corners of the ship, he whispered warnings about Zira's growing influence. "She's manipulating us," he insisted. "Every time something goes wrong, she's there, fixing it. Yes, but only after she causes it. She's testing us, weakening us." His words struck a chord with many. Fear spread quickly among the crew, fueled by the strange occurrences that continued to plague the ship. Equipment malfunctions persisted, though they always seemed to happen near Zira's quarters. Lights flickered erratically, and whispers echoed through the corridors late at night. Even those who initially supported Zira began to question whether her presence was worth the risk. One evening, during one of these clandestine gatherings, Dax unveiled his plan. "We can't wait any longer," he declared, pacing back and forth as his small group of followers listened intently. "If we don't act now, she'll destroy us all. We need to take control of this ship and remove her from the equation." The room fell silent as the weight of his words sank in. Removing Zira could mean anything from confining her to ejecting her into space. No one spoke aloud what they were thinking, but the implication hung heavy in the air. Finally, one of the engineers raised a hesitant hand. "What about the captain? He won't let us just do whatever you're planning." Dax smirked, a cold gleam in his eyes. "That's why we'll have to deal with him first." Meanwhile, Zira sensed the growing hostility aboard the ship. Though she couldn't understand every word spoken against her, she felt the shift in energy around her. Crew members avoided her gaze, stepping aside when she passed. Some muttered under their breath, casting wary glances her way. It hurt, but worse than the rejection was the fear that she might actually be responsible for the chaos unfolding around her. She confided in Leila one evening, sitting cross-legged on the floor of the infirmary while the doctor reviewed test results. "I scared," Zira admitted, her voice trembling. "Not no, if me bad." Leila placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You're not bad, Zira. You've done nothing wrong. This is just complicated. People are afraid because they don't understand you." "But I try help," Zira exclaimed, tears welling in her luminous eyes. "Why still hate?" Leila sighed, wishing she had an easy answer. "Fear makes people irrational. They see your powers and assume the worst, even when you've proven yourself time and again." Zira lowered her head, her crystalline hair shimmering faintly in the soft light. "Maybe better. Leave." "No," Leila said firmly, gripping Zira's hand. "You belong here, with us. We'll figure this out together." But even as she spoke, Leila couldn't shake the feeling that things were spiraling out of control. She reported her concerns to Elias, urging him to address the growing unrest before it escalated further. "If we don't act soon, Dax will push the crew too far," she warned. "They're scared, Elias, and scared people do reckless things." Elias nodded grimly. "I know, but how do I convince them that Zira isn't a threat without alienating half the crew?" "You lead by example," Leila replied. "Show them that trust is stronger than fear." The confrontation came sooner than anyone expected. Early one morning, as the crew gathered for breakfast in the mess hall, Dax stormed in with a group of armed followers. Their faces were grim, their weapons drawn. The room fell silent as everyone turned to stare. "This ends now," Dax announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Captain Vane has made it clear he values an alien over the safety of this crew. From this moment forward, we're taking command of the EOs. Anyone who opposes us will be treated as a traitor." Pandemonium erupted as shouts filled the air. Some crew members rose to defend Elias, while others hesitated, torn between loyalty and fear. Elias stepped forward, his posture calm but commanding. "Stand down, Dax. This isn't the way." "The hell it isn't," Dax snapped, pointing his weapon at Elias. "You've let this thing." He gestured toward Zira, who stood quietly near the back of the room. "Put us all in danger. It's time someone took charge." Before the situation could escalate further, Zira moved. Stepping forward, she raised her hands, her body glowing faintly as energy pulsed around her. "No fight," she pleaded, her voice steady despite the turmoil. "Please, stop." Her words went unheeded. The glow intensified, and suddenly, the lights flickered violently. Alarms blared throughout the ship, warning of critical system failures. Panels sparked, and the temperature plummeted drastically. Panic swept through the room as crew members scrambled to regain control. "What did you do?" Dax shouted, turning his weapon on Zira. "I not." Zira cried, backing away. Her emotions surged, feeding the chaos. The hum of energy grew louder, vibrating through the walls until it felt like the entire ship might collapse. Elias seized the opportunity, stepping between Zira and Dax. "Enough," he bellowed, his voice cutting through the noise. "This isn't helping anyone. If we tear each other apart, we lose everything, including our humanity." For a moment, the room froze. Dax hesitated, his weapon wavering. Then, with a snarl, he lowered it slightly. "Fine, but she stays confined until we decide what to do with her." Elias exchanged a glance with Zira, silently asking for her trust. Reluctantly, she nodded, allowing herself to be escorted back to her quarters under guard. As the immediate crisis subsided, the crew dispersed, leaving behind a palpable sense of unease. Later that night, Elias visited Zira in her quarters. She sat on the edge of her bed, her head bowed, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Sorry," she whispered as he entered. "I try, but still bad happen." "It's not your fault," Elias assured her, kneeling beside her. "None of this is. Dax is using fear to divide us. But we won't let him win. Together, we'll find a way through this." Zira looked up, her glowing eyes reflecting both gratitude and doubt. "Together. Together," Elias repeated firmly. As the Eos sailed onward through the stars, its passengers remained locked in a fragile stalemate. Trust had been broken, alliances fractured. Yet amid the betrayal and fear, tiny sparks of hope still burned, fueled by the bond between Zira and Elias, and the belief that even in the darkest moments, redemption was possible. The true test of their resolve, however, lay just ahead, a reckoning that would force them to confront not only their fears, but also the secrets buried deep within Zira's soul. The aftermath of the mutiny left the Eos in a state of fragile calm, but beneath the surface, tensions simmered like a storm waiting to break. Zira remained confined to her quarters, guarded by security officers who were unsure whether they were protecting her or keeping her contained. The crew was divided, their loyalties fractured between Captain Elias Vane's vision of unity and Engineer Dax Monroe's fear-driven leadership. The ship itself seemed to reflect the turmoil within its walls. Systems flickered unpredictably, temperature fluctuations caused discomfort, and an uneasy silence hung over the corridors. For Zira, the days passed in quiet reflection. She spent hours sitting cross-legged on the floor of her quarters, focusing on the glowing orb she had created. It pulsed softly in rhythm with her breathing, a soothing presence amidst the chaos. Yet, despite her efforts to remain calm, guilt gnawed at her. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was responsible for the unrest aboard the Eos. Every malfunction, every whispered accusation, it all traced back to her. Her powers, once a source of wonder, now felt like a curse. One evening, as she meditated, Leela entered quietly, carrying a tray of food. "You need to eat," she said gently, setting the tray down beside Zira. "You're not taking care of yourself." Zira opened her eyes, her luminous gaze meeting Leela's. "I no deserve food. I cause trouble." Leela knelt beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You didn't cause this, Zira. None of us are perfect. We make mistakes. We struggle. But blaming yourself won't fix anything. What matters is what you do next. But what can I do? Zira asked, her voice trembling. Everyone afraid. Hate me. They don't hate you. Leela replied firmly. Some are just scared because they don't understand. And fear makes people act irrationally. But there are still those who believe in you, including Elias. At the mention of his name, Zira's expression softened. Over the past weeks, Elias had become more than just a protector to her. He represented hope, trust, and a connection to something greater than herself. His unwavering faith in her gave her strength when she doubted her own worth. I try help, Zira murmured, clutching the orb tightly. But my power, too strong, hurt everyone. Leela hesitated, choosing her words carefully. Your abilities are tied to your emotions, Zira. When you're scared or upset, they spiral out of control. But if you can learn to master them, if you can find balance, you might be able to use them to heal instead of harm. Heal, Zira repeated, her eyes widening slightly. The idea seemed impossible, yet it sparked a glimmer of hope within her. Yes, Leela said with a nod, but it won't be easy. It'll take time, patience, and trust, not just from you, but from all of us. Meanwhile, Elias worked tirelessly to mend the fractures among the crew. He called a meeting in the mess hall, addressing both supporters and dissenters alike. Standing before them, he spoke with conviction, his voice steady and calm. We've been through a lot together, and I know fear has driven some of us to make choices we regret. But we can't let that fear tear us apart. Zira isn't our enemy. She's one of us now. If we turn our backs on her, we lose sight of who we are as humans. His words resonated with some, but others remained skeptical. Dax stood at the back of the room, arms crossed, his face unreadable. When Elias finished speaking, he stepped forward, his tone biting. Words won't fix the damage she's done. Look around you. The ship's falling apart, and she's the reason why. How long until something worse happens? Before Elias could respond, a sudden jolt rocked the ship, throwing everyone off balance. Alarms blared, and red warning lights flashed throughout the room. The intercom crackled to life, announcing a critical failure in the reactor core. This is it, Dax shouted, pointing accusingly at Zira. She's doing it again. No, Elias countered sharply. This isn't her fault. Everyone to your stations. We need to stabilize. Chaos erupted as the crew scrambled to respond. In engineering, sparks flew from overloaded panels, and smoke filled the air. Crew members shouted orders over the din, trying desperately to contain the situation. Amidst the commotion, Zira appeared, having slipped past her guards. Her body glowed faintly as she raised her hands, channeling her energy into the failing systems. Stay back, Dax yelled, grabbing her arm roughly. You've done enough. Let her go, Elias commanded, stepping between them. She's the only one who can fix this. Zira wrenched free of Dax's grip, her eyes blazing with determination. Closing her eyes, she focused all her strength on stabilizing the reactor. Energy surged through her, lighting up the room as the systems began to reboot. Slowly, the alarms fell silent, and the lights returned to normal. When Zira opened her eyes, exhaustion etched into her features. She swayed unsteadily, supported only by the sheer force of will keeping her upright. The crew stared at her in stunned silence, their expressions a mix of awe and disbelief. She saved us, someone whispered, breaking the spell. Dax stepped forward, his face pale with shock. For the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes. How? How did you do that? Zira looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. Not want, hurt anyone. Only want. Help. Her sincerity struck a chord, even in Dax. Lowering his head, he muttered, I thought you were dangerous, but maybe I was wrong. The admission hung in the air, heavy with meaning. One by one, the crew began to murmur apologies, their hostility melting away. Zira, overwhelmed by the sudden shift, simply nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. In the days that followed, the crew worked together to repair the damage and restore harmony aboard the Eos. Zira, though weakened by her efforts, continued to practice controlling her powers under Layla's guidance. She learned to focus her energy inward, suppressing the chaotic impulses that threatened to overwhelm her. It was a painful process, requiring immense discipline and sacrifice, but she endured, knowing it was necessary for the sake of those she cared about. Elias visited her often, offering encouragement and support. Their bond deepened, built on mutual respect and shared purpose. "You're stronger than you realize," he told her one evening as they gazed out at the stars together. "And you've shown us what true courage looks like." Zira smiled faintly, her glowing eyes reflecting the distant galaxies. "Thank you for believing in me." "Always," Elias replied, his voice filled with quiet admiration. Though the journey ahead promised challenges, the crew of the Eos faced it united. For the first time in weeks, they stood as one. Zira's selflessness had inspired them to overcome their fears, proving that redemption was possible even in the darkest moments. As the ship sailed onward through the vast expanse of space, its passengers carried with them a renewed sense of hope, and the knowledge that together they could overcome anything. The Eos sailed steadily through the endless expanse of space, its systems humming with restored stability. The scars of the recent mutiny still lingered, both within the ship's walls and among its crew. But a newfound sense of unity had begun to take root. Zira, once viewed as an enigma and a potential threat, now stood at the heart of this transformation. Her selflessness and determination had inspired those around her, proving that trust could bridge even the widest divides. In the weeks following the reactor incident, life aboard the Eos slowly returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could be after such turmoil. The crew worked together seamlessly, repairing damaged equipment, recalibrating sensors, and ensuring the ship was ready for whatever lay ahead. Yet, beneath the surface, subtle changes were taking shape. Conversations grew warmer, smiles more frequent, and tensions less palpable. Even Dax Monroe, who had been one of Zira's fiercest opponents, began to soften his stance. Though he remained cautious, his interactions with her became less hostile and more curious. Zira herself continued to adapt to life aboard the ship. With Layla's guidance, she honed her abilities, learning to channel her energy in controlled bursts rather than overwhelming surges. It was a painstaking process, requiring immense focus and discipline, but each small victory brought her closer to mastering her powers. She practiced late at night in her quarters, sitting cross-legged on the floor with the glowing orb cradled in her hands. Its light pulsed rhythmically, sensing with her heartbeat as she meditated. One evening, as Zira practiced, Elias entered quietly. He leaned against the doorway, watching her with quiet admiration. "You've come a long way," he said softly, breaking the silence. Zira opened her eyes, startled by his presence. A faint smile curved her lips as she set the orb aside. "Trying. Get better." "And you are," Elias replied, stepping into the room. "You've shown incredible strength, not just in controlling your powers, but in earning the crew's trust. That's no small feat." Zira lowered her gaze, her luminous eyes reflecting gratitude. "Because of you, all of you, you helped me." "It goes both ways," Elias said, kneeling beside her. "You've reminded us what it means to face fear with courage, and to find hope even in the darkest moments." For a moment, neither spoke. The quiet between them was comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding. Over time, their bond had grown stronger, transcending species and language. To Zira, Elias represented safety, acceptance, and purpose. To Elias, Zira embodied resilience, compassion, and the limitless potential of life itself. As the days passed, the crew debated what to do next. Their original mission, to search for resources to sustain Earth's struggling colonies remained unfinished, but the discovery of Zira complicated matters. Some argued they should continue their journey, using her knowledge to guide them toward valuable resources. Others believed returning to Earth was the safest course of action, allowing scientists to study her unique biology in greater detail. Elias called a meeting in the mess hall to address the issue. Standing before the assembled crew, he spoke with calm authority. "We have two choices," he began. "We can return to Earth and hand over Zira to the so who may not see her as we do, or we can keep moving forward, exploring the stars together. What happens next is up to all of us." The room erupted into murmurs as the crew exchanged thoughts. Finally, Leela stepped forward, addressing the group. "Zira isn't just a resource or a subject of study. She's part of this crew, a friend. If we abandon her now, we lose something far more valuable than any material gain." Her words resonated deeply, sparking nods of agreement throughout the room. Even Dax, who had once led the charge against Zira, raised his hand hesitantly. When Elias acknowledged him, he cleared his throat and spoke gruffly. "I won't pretend I'm completely okay with everything that's happened. But if she stays, I'll stand by her, for the sake of the mission and the crew." A wave of approval swept through the room, punctuated by applause. Zira, standing quietly near the back, felt tears welling in her eyes. For the first time since being abandoned on Erindor 7, she truly belonged. With the decision made, the EOs charted a new course into uncharted territory. Guided by fragments of knowledge encoded in Zira's DNA, the crew ventured deeper into the galaxy than ever before. Along the way, Zira shared glimpses of her people's history and culture, painting vivid pictures of their achievements and failures. Through gestures, drawings, and halting phrases, she conveyed stories of exploration, innovation, and ultimately, collapse. Her tales sparked wonder and curiosity among the humans, bridging the gap between their worlds. But Zira's awakening also revealed darker truths. As she delved deeper into the dormant consciousness embedded in her DNA, she uncovered memories of her people's hubris, their reckless pursuit of power that led to their downfall. These revelations weighed heavily on her, reminding her of the responsibility she carried. Her abilities weren't just gifts. They were tools meant to preserve and protect, not destroy. One night, as the EOs drifted past a massive nebula painted in hues of crimson and gold, Zira joined Elias on the observation deck. They stood side by side, gazing out at the breathtaking vista. After a long pause, Zira spoke softly, her voice tinged with resolve. "My people make mistake. Think strong mean invincible, but wrong. Strong mean care, for others, for world, for future." Elias nodded thoughtfully. "That's a lesson humanity needs to learn too. We're capable of great things, but only if we use our strength wisely." Zira turned to him, her glowing eyes filled with determination. "I want help. Help humans. Help stars." "You already are," Elias replied, smiling warmly. "Every day you're here, you remind us of what's possible when we choose understanding over fear." As the EOs sailed onward, its passengers embraced the unknown with open hearts and minds. Zira had become more than just a survivor. She was a beacon of hope, inspiring those around her to strive for something greater. Together, they faced the challenges of the cosmos, united by a shared vision of exploration, discovery, and coexistence. The journey was far from over, and dangers undoubtedly awaited them. But aboard the EOs, fear no longer ruled supreme. Instead, it gave way to courage, compassion, and the belief that even in the vastness of space, connection was possible. For Zira and the crew, the stars held infinite possibilities, and they were ready to embrace them all. In the end, the story of the EOs wasn't just about survival or redemption. It was about finding family in the most unexpected places and realizing that true strength came not from dominance, but from unity. As the ship disappeared into the horizon of stars, its legacy burned brightly, a testament to the enduring power of hope and humanity.